Well, joining me to discuss further the Greek crisis around the world is global analyst Marco Vicenzino. Good morning, Marco. Where do we start with all this? Because we're kind of coming up to the point where we're in a bit of a no man's land as to what happens.
Right now, it's entering extreme danger zone as we approach. On the one hand, you have the date approaching, June 30th deadline, and we have two separate things. One is that the Europeans have refused to extend Greece its bailout plan by 1 month, as the Tsipras government had demanded. On the other hand, you also have the IMF. Now, when it expires on June 30th, and if they don't pay their bill to the IMF, Christine Lagarde, the IMF chief, has 1 month to declare Greece in default. If she's going to do it on July 1st, or she's going to do it on July 6th, the day after the referendum, no one knows yet.
So she has some wiggle room. It's up to her whether she plays that card.
Exactly. And if she declares default before the referendum or immediately following the June 30th deadline, that automatically blackballs Greece. It ostracizes them from international capital markets, which they'll have no access to. One could say even up to a decade. And this is a very serious. She has a certain level of discretion. The European Central Bank, although it's suspended any more support for the Greek banks, has said that the door remains open, that if something happens, if either the Greek government or the creditors were to reverse course in a brief amount of time, the European Central Bank is prepared to make a move. But for now, it's frozen.
Things were starting to improve. Last week we saw bond rates coming down to around 10%, down from the 13% mark. But we're seeing things like Macedonia saying that it should pull out its funds from Greek banks. That's not going to help the Greek banking system.
It's taken proper precautions. Everyone externally is taking proper precautions. Like I said, we're entering this no man's land between now and July 5th in the referendum. And by the time that referendum arrives on Sunday, July 5th, Greece may already have defaulted. They may already be outside the euro. It's a very ambiguous area. The uncertainty is enormous this entire week.
Yanis Varoufakis said that introducing capital control was the antithesis of monetary union. They've now done it. Is that to stop a run on the banks? Is it to sort of slow everybody down, get them through the next few days, get them to this referendum? What's your take?
Buying time. It's crunch time. And after months of just, at home, political paralysis and polarization, complete economic stagnation at home. They've presided over diplomatic gridlock in Europe. So at this sense, desperation is setting in. It's crunch time. They're trying to buy time until the day of the July 5th referendum. That for them is the goal line. If they can reach that goal line, and then from there, they can say it's up to the Greek people. Just one point I want to make is the fact that from their perspective, from Syriza's perspective, their narrative is the fact that the creditors are trying to bring down the Greek government, and the creditors themselves, and so what Tsipras himself is trying to do is to restore the democratic process to the Greek people by making them the decision.
Taking it over to them.
The flip side to that, in my opinion, is the fact that for the most part, there's been 5 months of no results. What this comes down to, the government will say that this is a decision of either national pride and integrity over austerity. The bottom line is that the question should really be, does Greece want to stay in Europe or not?
I'll pick you up on that point in a moment, but let's just mention the IMF here, because are the IMF and the Troika basically playing hardball? We've talked about this little bit of wiggle room that's left, but they really are saying, look, you don't pay this money, even though it's going to be a bit of circular money because the money's going to pay back to the IMF, but it's going to come from them essentially as well. What do you think they're going to do? Is this just brinkmanship right up to the 11th hour?
This game of brinksmanship that you're referring to has been a reckless game of brinksmanship that I think the Tsipras government has been playing. So you referred to the IMF has global clients throughout the world. Africa, they can't let a developed country, which Greece technically is, a European developed country.
Brazil's moaning about the way they're being handled.
Exactly. Not only Brazil, but many other countries in Africa. That's with respect to the IMF, because they have their global clients and they have to make sure that they can't make an exception for one. Yeah. And then within Europe, the Europeans are saying, look at Ireland, look at Spain, look at Cyprus, look at Portugal. They've been doing the necessary reforms Why give Greece, and by making an exception, it sets a bad precedent. So the point I'm trying to make here is basically is that the Greek government, for the most part, the Tsipras government, let's be specific here, the Tsipras government right now is the reason, in my opinion, why they made the referendum was the fact that now they don't want to make the tough choices. The game of brinksmanship has backfired. So what they're trying to do is that they're trying to abdicate their responsibility to the Greek people in extreme circumstances. Why? It's because to maintain political unity.
This is like another general election, essentially handing it over to
the reason they
people.
want to do it is to maintain political unity within their own party and political survival, because they know if they have to make that tough decision, if that hard choice needs to be made, what's going to happen is that their party is going to fall apart. So it's their short-term political interest over Greece's long-term national interest.
Marco, we've got a lot more to talk about, and we'll certainly do that again in the next hour. We'll also be keeping an eye on how the markets are opening this morning around Europe. Of course, there's been at least a 2% drop in Asian markets, but like I say, we'll speak to you more in the next hour. Marco, thank you.